Okay. Also, if my mom might be on here, so just make me look good if she's watching. She
I love it.
she does like to attend sometimes. Yeah, Jen, I also said to Erinn and Taylor that these first couple minutes where we try to let some people trickle in, if you want to talk to me about stuff while we're doing this, so I don't sit quietly and awkwardly. I'm happy to chat. We were just talking about spring break plans. Erinn's going to go see her parents for the first time since the pandemic. Do you have any spring break
Wow.
plans? I guess we're not on spring break, but yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to the beach for the first time, seeing the ocean for the first time in over a year, so that'll be good.
Nice. Let me know if it's still there. I want to make sure
Right?
it hasn't gone anywhere.
I know.
Which beach are you going to?
We're actually going to this tiny little island off of Alabama called Dolphin Island. I had never heard of it. It's like outside of
Sounds
Mobile,
nice.
but it's quiet, it's remote. It was, we've got dogs, so space for the dogs to run around, dog friendly.
Yeah.
So just like, still being able to social distance and keep our space, but maybe do a little bit of work play trip, work with a background of the ocean instead of just my yard. So
Yeah, we have a Dolphin Island supporter in the audience.
oh,
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear about that. That sounds pretty cool.
Yes, I love when
Yeah.
I talk about Dolphin Island and there's people that have heard of it. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to wait a minute or two for folks to trickle in. But this is our 7th and second to last live conversation as part of the ATL Education Expo. Today, we're going to be talking about growing teachers and leaders, which I think is a quietly hot topic in the education space because of the fact that the teaching profession right now is not doing terribly well in terms of interest and retention. So we're going to dive into that. I'm here with 3 amazing organizations who all approach growth of teachers and leaders in a slightly different way. So we're going to be talking with Taylor, Erinn, and Jen here in a moment. We'll just give you another minute. And if you are watching and want to engage on social media, ATL Expo is our hashtag, and Education ATL is the website. After this, we really hope to get a lot more folks on there in terms of like listings. We've had a lot of people like express interest now that they know that's there, which is kind of cool. So excited to chat with y'all. I'm going to wait one more minute and then we're going to kick it off with Taylor from American College of Education. My spring break plans are, I don't have any, but I'm getting my vaccine on Thursday. So I'm going to be really mentally preparing for that. Yeah, for 4 days. And then after that, I'll just be counting down until I get the second one, I guess, and waiting for the summertime. This 30-degree weather this morning, for those who are local, I think we're all local. It's like, what? Why? Also, the last thing I'll say before we actually talk about real stuff, if you guys are on Instagram and there's like an Atlanta Instagram, there's a bunch of Atlanta Instagrams, but in the park next to where I live in Old Fourth Ward, every time it rains, like a huge like pond basically accumulates because there's not great drainage. And yesterday, a guy went out there and put a kayak and started like boating around in the pond. It's on Instagram, floating around. Eventually, the cops came and stopped him, but he had a full life vest, the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, he didn't get arrested or anything, but that's my kind of humor.
Yeah,
that's
talk about making the most of it. Like we've got this drainage problem. Let's put a boat on it. Like,
yeah, honestly,
enjoyable.
Every time. Because you look out there and it's like a huge lake. So anyways, maybe I'll post that at the end of this conversation. I do want to get us started so we can spend most of the time talking about these different issues. First, we want to give each of the speakers a chance to walk through what their organization does and how they support growth of teachers and leaders. So we're going to let Taylor Ingalls from American College of Education kick us off. Go ahead, Taylor.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, wait, can you see my presentation mode or can you see my notes?
No, we're good. We see your slides. Your slides.
I can never get that right. All right.
It's not good.
Well, I am from American College of Education. We are a 100% online college. We started in 2005. We are a benefit corporation, so that means that we are a for-profit company using those dollars to do good. We partner with about a dozen nonprofit organizations now and continuing to grow that. Since our founding in 2005, we have delivered the most affordable and highest quality education programs available. Our faculty are experienced and they have worked in the field, and some work in the field still. And we continue to grow our programs as we see that the need in the field. Building on our foundation of education, we have also expanded into leadership, nursing, healthcare. We just launched our BSN to MSN, RN to MSN, and RN to BSN programs. And all of our programs are rooted in forward-thinking, evidence-based instruction, research, theory, and practice. So when we look at ACE by the numbers, we are ranked number 3 in the nation for conferred master's degrees in education. We offer over 50 programs. And while we're located home-based in Indianapolis, we offer degrees all over the country. I am local in Atlanta, and we have other individuals all over the country helping to create those relationships with other local areas. We're accredited by the Higher Learning Commission. We are CAPE accredited, and we have over 23,000 graduates. So our affordability is the reason why we do this. We want to make sure that educators who we know don't make the highest dollars are able to continue their education and continue to grow in the field so that they can be the best that they can be. We've made the deliberate decision not to accept federal funding, which means that our tuition is based on the real cost of what it takes to create the education rather than what we can get from the government. However, we do still provide financing options. It's just not federal funding. Educators can get a degree that fits their budget. Our master's level programs are a fraction of other comparable degrees. The cost savings includes our doctoral programs and specialist programs. And as you can see, our tuition is half and sometimes 2/3 less than other institutions. And if you partner with me at a local organization or at a school district, you can also get tuition grants off of that already low price. And you can see those tuition grant costs there in that infographic as well. So our online programs were completely online. You can do those programs at any time, any place. I know right now, especially, it is really needed, but we are an online native. We have been doing this even before COVID, so I would like to say that we're kind of hipster. We offer exceptional online degrees tailored with the educator's schedule in mind. So we understand that educators can sometimes be in the classroom for 10, 12 hours at a time. So it's needed that that flexibility is there. You can get a master's degree taking 5-week courses with one course at a time with a break in between, and then the doctorate level is 10-week courses. So our upcoming term starts are in April. The deadline to get registered and to get applied is April 9th, just so we have time to get you in the door. And then the term start would be April 12th. The next one would be May 24th, after that June 14th, and then after that July 12th, if you're interested. So I'm just gonna wrap up there. We also have some other value-added programs. We've got our digital toolbox webinars that are free webinars that you can access at ace.edu/webinars. Some educators are using those to get professional development credits. So if that's something you would like to do, just reach out to me. I can work with your school district But if you want some more information, you can visit our website at ace.edu. You can call that phone number, or you can find me on all social channels at Taylor Ingalls Ace, or you can email me at taylor.ingalls@ace.edu. I am happy to answer any questions later. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. And now we're going to move over to Jen Owen from Co-Created.
Hey y'all, thanks Ian. Let me get this screen shared. All right, are we good?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, thank you everybody for being here. I'm so excited to share about what Co-Created's working on, and hopefully it's something that resonates with you. So the first thing you'll see up at the top here is the tagline, which is finding the perfect professional development for your school doesn't have to be so hard. And the reason I went with that is, in my experience as a school leader, as a teacher, and even as a training professional myself, there was always this pain point when it came to professional development. And hopefully some of you in the audience can relate to that. Like there are these pain points we experience, and I really wanted to do something to alleviate that. So at first I was wondering, am I the only one in this boat? And I started asking around. These were some of the things I found when I started asking teachers and principals and professional development training providers. And unfortunately, one of the big ones that I heard a lot is PD sucks. That's a terrible thing to hear about professional learning. Like, learning is our business as educators. We should be really into this, and there's something going on that's missing. One of the things that's missing is teacher voice and teacher choice. Teachers are feeling like, does my input even matter? I feel cut out of this decision process. That's a big problem. And then for principals, you guys are so busy. Leading a school is one of the hardest jobs I ever had, and I know exactly how hard you work. So it takes up time to find professional development trainings that you really just don't even have. And then one principal I talked to said something that stuck with me when I asked him about finding quality professional development. He said, yeah, I can find it. Everybody wants to sell me something, but you asked me about quality. And that's the piece that can sometimes be really hard to ascertain when you're figuring out what professional developments you want to book. And finally, for the trainers, especially if you're a small business owner like I was, it's just really overwhelming trying to do it all. You're trying to market your services, you're trying to run your business, you're trying to deliver something really quality that's going to make an impact, and it's a lot to balance. So what we've come up with is educators deserve better. Y'all deserve better than all that. So we want teachers to have more agency. We want our professional development providers to be able to make more impact, and for principals and other school leaders to be able to make more informed decisions. You need the information at the fingertips to be able to make those big decisions about spending your professional development budget. So what we've developed is a marketplace, and a marketplace is essentially a connection point, bottom line. It connects people that need a thing with the thing that they need. So the Co-Created marketplace connects schools, school leaders with the training providers who provide the training services that are such a big, important job, a part of our job as educators. So as of now, this is, in startup land, it's all about iterating, and Co-Created is a startup. So the first iteration, what you're able to do is you're able to go to the marketplace platform, and as this video kind of plays out, you'll see the different pieces. You'll go to the platform and you'll be able to browse a bunch of different listings. At this point, we have 18, we've got several more in the pipeline. There's more coming every day, and you'll be able to filter those listings by categories so that you can really search for the exact thing that you need. And it's all in one place. So you're not having to Google all over. You're not having to spend hours reaching out in your network. It's all right there for you, so you can easily browse and make decisions. There's information about each provider, so you can read a little bit more, and then you're able to just connect directly. So you can fill out a form, really simple. It puts you directly in contact with that provider so that y'all can do business together. So one-stop shop cuts out a lot of the nonsense and lets you get it done faster. Now, again,
hey Jen, while you keep going, apologies for interrupting. I just want to make sure that we get to see your slides properly. I think they froze on the quote slide for me. If you want to,
really?
just like, okay, now it's back. We're good. Okay,
Which
I
one
just
are
want to
you
make
seeing
sure
now?
that we
Does
said
the one you're seeing, does it say 1.0 or 2.0?
2.0.
Were y'all able to see
It
this
says
one?
2.0. We were not, but now we can.
Well, let's hang out here just a moment. Thank you so much for letting me know. Technology, you just never
Yeah,
can
of course, of
tell.
course.
We're all
Absolutely.
navigating it, right?
No,
Yeah,
it's going
so
great
just
though. Go
a
ahead.
little product demo here so you can see what co-created looks like now. So if you were to go to co-created.org, this is where you would land and this is where you would do all those different things I just described. So being able to browse, being able to make decisions, and being able to connect. So moving on to 2.0, Ian, are we on the right one? Okay, good. Thank you so much. So again, co-created is iterating, we're building, we're growing, we're responding to the things we've heard from the people we've been interviewing to make sure that this is something that's actually meaningful to you. And some of the features that have come up time and time again that are going to be useful and needed are the ones we're putting into this next build. So it's already underway. It's coming soon, and these are some of the things we're adding. So for school leaders, you're going to be empowered by a whole lot of data. You'll have a data dashboard to see trends across staff so that you're not worrying about making redundant spends. You actually know what the learning history is, so you can decide what the learning future should be. And there's ratings and reviews about the providers, so you can actually vet the quality based on the reviews and ratings that those providers have gotten. For our teachers, and this is one of my most favorite parts of this, I want teachers to have agency and feel empowered. So teachers are going to have a lot more input in the professional development process by using co-created. You'll be able to showcase your accomplishments on a professional profile. You will be able to own your own data. It will belong to you rather than living at the district level. It'll go with you wherever you go. And you'll be able to voice your input by giving ratings and reviews, seeing other teachers' ratings and reviews, and then finally saving things to your favorites list so you can let your principal know what the trainings are that actually matter to you. And finally, on the provider side, just making it easier for you to do business. There's a lot of features built in for streamlining communication, automating that stuff, doing all that contracty, invoicey, businessy pieces that take up a lot of your time. So just doing the job that you love to do with a lot less overhead. And a little about me, so lifelong educator, really passionate about education. And I wanted to share this quote with you because I think it really sums up my heart for this work. So I founded the co-created marketplace because I believe education is the way to change the world, and that helping teachers improve their practice is the way to change education. When high quality, cost-effective training is more accessible to students, to educators, then students win. So we're trying to make that possible by making the marketplace simple, accessible, and useful to you. Finally,
Awesome.
I would
Thank you,
love,
Jen.
what's up, Ian?
No, it's okay. I keep interrupting you. I apologize. Go ahead.
Hopefully, was it another technology issue?
No, I thought you were closing out, and now you are closing out. So go
Now I'm
for it.
closing out. Now I'm closing out. You beat me to the punch. So to stay in touch, I am on all different social media platforms. You know, take a look at my listing in the Expo directory. It's got all that information for you. My email's here, and then there is a landing page where you can sign up for early access to that 2.0 platform I just described. So it's still in development, but I want y'all to be the first to know when it's ready to go. So the QR code's here, you can scan it. And if that doesn't work for you, just go to co-created.org, the main website, and you'll find it there too. So hopefully you sign up, and you know, all feedback welcome. This is a building process, so please let me know, and thank you so much.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Jen. The only reason I jumped in is because I know how much work you guys have put into the platform itself. I want to make sure that people got a chance to see it. So thank you for bearing with me, and so apologies for the interruptions. Now I want to kick it over to Erinn Cottman for our last presentation before we get into the discussion. So we already have 3 questions in the Q&A. Again, if you have questions, throw them in there and we'll make sure to get to them. But Erinn, the floor is yours.
Great. Okay, everyone can see my screen now, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. So hi, everyone. My name is Erinn Cottman. I'm the founder of Erinn Cottman Teacher Development, which is a consulting company that specializes in quality professional development for teachers, and more specifically for budding leaders. So just a little bit about me really quickly. So I am in my 11th year of education. I started as an English teacher, so shout out to all the ELA teachers out there. And as I moved into leadership, I've been an assistant principal the last 5 years. I realized that coaching was one, my passion, but two, it was the vehicle for how you keep teachers in your building. I found that once I became a leader, my development kind of like stuttered, it kind of stopped, right? And it wasn't until I said, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing. I got a lot of development as a teacher, but I didn't really get any as a leader. I need some help. And so I started getting development as a leader, and that changed the game for me. And so from that, I realized there were a lot of other new leaders and teachers who just weren't getting quality leadership development. The problem with that, we know, is that your teachers are having direct contact with your leaders. So if your leaders are not developed, they're going to feel that, right? Your teachers are going to feel that. And so we realize that we have teachers leaving the field. And one of the reasons that teachers often cite is leadership, as well as a lack of development, right? And so I created my company to help alleviate that problem. So some of the services that I offer are classroom management, instructional strategies, teacher resilience. I'll talk about it for a hot second. Teacher resilience, if you are keeping up on the research, there is a way to keep teachers in your building, and it's by teaching them the resilience piece. So those sessions are based on Elena Aguilar, who I had the pleasure of working with recently. But it's this idea of when you give teachers the adaptive skills to take care of themselves, they stay in the work longer. And then obviously also culturally relevant pedagogy, making sure that what you're putting in front of your kiddos matches them and their needs and what they're bringing already to the building. And then my favorite is leadership development. I specialize in leaders who are new, so like years 0 to 2, maybe even 3, right? And focusing on adaptive skills, technical skills. I offer one-on-one coaching and new leader 101. So like when you're brand new, what do you need to know, right? Keep in mind, good teachers don't always make good leaders, right? It's a whole different skill set that as a principal, you have to make sure that you're being intentional about developing. So I just want to quickly jump into the adaptive versus technical skills and why that's such a focus of mine. Oftentimes teachers end up in leadership roles because they can do the technical side, right? That's how they show up on our radar. They can check the boxes, they have the knowledge, they have the competencies. And then typically what tends to happen is they don't always have the adaptive leadership skills, right? How do you make someone from a manager to a leader, right? So a lot of my development also focuses on those interpersonal skills, the attitude, the body language you bring. How do you tell a story as a leader that gets your staff around you? How do you motivate others, right? Those are not things that you typically can find in a book. So we work on how do you get those skills that actually make you a leader that your teachers are willing to follow. Those are the leaders that get stuff done. And so that's also part of the leadership development that I offer. And then the leadership coaching, I think for me, as personally, it was life-changing for me because there is so much beauty and power in having a leadership coach. One, if you can have a coach that is not in your building, they are unbiased, right? So when you're coming and having to make critical leadership decisions, you have a voice that you can bounce ideas off of, practice conversations with, and they're not in the thick of it with you. I believe in strength-based coaching. So my one-on-one coaching ensures that you leverage your strengths as well as the strengths of others, okay? I'm gonna be pushing you to look for the strengths in others to address those gaps. And the more that your leaders are developed, that trickles down to your teachers. And then also it just strengthens your leadership skills. I believe every leader has a coach. I don't care if you're the principal, the superintendent, you need a coach, okay? And so that's also one of my major offerings is one-on-one leadership coaching as well. How you can reach me, I keep it very simple. Everything's just my name, but you can reach me on my website. I'm on Facebook and on Instagram. I have a pretty strong Instagram presence. I typically post a good leadership tip every single day for you all. But though that is who I am, that is what I offer. Coaching is my passion, and I'm super excited to engage in further conversation with y'all.
Awesome. Thank you, Erinn. And thank you to Taylor and Jen also for presenting. So now I want to kick off the discussion portion of this conversation. And again, this is ATL Education Expo. If you hear or see anything you like, definitely put it out on social media and use the hashtag ATL Expo. But we're going to start and go in order of the presentations with our panel question before I get into my real, passionate questions that I have about professional development. And we want to start by saying, how might schools, especially because we know schools and their school leaders have a limited amount of time and resources. And so knowing that and knowing the experiences each of you bring to the table, how might schools and districts provide a more intentional growth opportunity for their educators? And I want to just put context around this. Since over the last 10 years, the amount of applicants to traditional graduate programs for teacher prep has gone down by 33%. We know that almost half of teachers leave the profession within 5 years. And we also know that about 15% of teachers retire each year. And so those three things together don't really bode well for profession. We know that teacher shortages exist in all 50 states at this point. So with that background, I'd love to hear about why teacher growth is important to that conversation. And then my question of how might schools and districts provide more intentional growth opportunities? That's a lot to handle, but I want to make sure everybody has a chance to dig into that, and then we'll go down some different pathways. So Taylor, I'd love to get your thoughts first and foremost about how schools and districts might create more intentional growth opportunities for teachers.
Yeah, so first off, I want to say what Erinn said about resiliency and, those, more soft skills rather than those technical skills. I completely agree. Like I talked about in our first conversation, Ian, I was headed towards the education field and quickly realized that I lacked some of that more soft skills. I could have done it, but I wouldn't have done it well because my heart wasn't there. So I think that educators need to be prepared that it's going to be hard work, not just hard work. You know what I mean? So kudos to you, Erinn. I completely agree. As far as keeping teachers on track and keeping educators going, I think you just need to make it fun and make it relevant to their work. So like what Jen said, professional development can be boring, but if you make it authentic and you make it relevant to their current work, then it can be fun. What we do at ACE is, like I said, all of our faculty members and all of our leaders, they've been in the classroom, they have been in the education realm, and so they know what it's like. And all of our assignments and all of our work is catered to what you're doing in your classroom. So if you're doing a research project, you're going to be doing the research with your students. You're going to be doing applicable studies. How does taking into account that a child didn't sleep last night affect their studies? Those type of things, you're doing it with your students, so it matters to you. It's not just this far off land. Making it actually matter and what they're passionate about, not just something that they need to check off. So that's kind of what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, definitely. Jen, what do you think?
Oh man, lots of thoughts on this one. This one's kind of a soapbox for me. So I think, let me start big picture by saying, like, the societal problem with this is the deprofessionalizing of teachers. Like, I think if we were treating teaching like the professional profession that it is, we would see more people attracted and recruited into this field. It's also not lost on me, and I'm just going to go here, that if we had more men in the field, it would be looked at differently. So it being a female dominated field, I think just dealing with the sexism in our society, like, that's a piece of it. So those are kind of my big picture thoughts. But when it comes to school leaders trying to get a little more intentional with how they're bringing these learning experiences into their school, like, my motto when I was a school leader was always, you can't do the job without the time to do the job. So I would never ask my teachers to do something without giving them the extra time to do it. And that required me to be really creative with time and scheduling. And fortunately, I was in like a smallish school, so we were able to kind of be more flexible and move things around a bit. But I would really encourage school leaders to think about, like, what are some more out of the box creative ways to use time and to use your schedule so that teachers have the time they need to do their job. Because one thing, when teachers go to professional development, they feel like it's a waste of their time. And I think that's a scarcity mindset. When you have a scarcity of time, you feel like anything taking it from you is like it feels like a threat. So if we want teachers to do their best job, like, we got to give them time to do it. Teachers need at least 1 hour of planning every single day uninterrupted. Better to have 2. Over in Europe, you've got teachers teaching half the day and planning half the day. So we really need to take into account that when you're teaching, like, if this was in the business world, that's the equivalent of facilitating a meeting and putting on a presentation and being on for 6 hours a day every day. So we just need to take those pieces a little more seriously.
Yeah, I mean, so much packed in there, and half the things I had written down you just touched on, but I want to let Erinn chime in here as well, because we're definitely going to dig into several of those issues. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jen, 100%, fully agree there. I would just add, not to be redundant, this idea of making your professional development targeted and differentiated. I think part of the problem too is often school leaders choose a topic, everyone's sitting there getting the same delivery, which you would not dare do to students, right? So you've lost half of your staff immediately because it's not differentiated for them, it's not targeted to them, it doesn't necessarily apply to them. Finding something that's applicable. So like, can I use this tomorrow in my classroom? Is this going to make my job easier? Is this going to help me reach more children? Staying away from like doing too much. So for instance, like whatever your school priorities are for that year, like your PD should be aligned to that. I feel like when I was in the classroom, I was frustrated because I thought, okay, if this year we're focusing on differentiation, why are we getting 30 PDs on classroom management? So like just making sure that it's something that actually applies to what I need to do or what our school focus is important. And then also, I believe every teacher should have a development plan, and not a like, because you're doing something wrong, but an actual, what is it that I, as a teacher, am saying to my principal or my coach? I really would like to get better at this. And my coaching and my development, there should be parts of that are targeted to my specific growth areas. That creates buy-in for the teacher because I've told you what I feel like I also want to get better at. So you've got to increase the buy-in from teachers, and they should have a say in the areas that they want to grow in.
Yeah, I mean, I love this because all three of you bring different perspectives and experiences, and we hit on all the fundamental issues right out of the gate. So I'm going to take them from like bottom up, which is great. I want to start with what Jen said about time, because that seems to be the recurring theme through almost all of these conversations is we don't give educators, and that's teachers, principals, it's everybody in the entire building, the time to actually sit and have any sort of metacognitive activities around their own job, right? We're maximizing seat time, making sure that like we have 20 minutes for lunch, because God forbid if the kids have 5 minutes less of math, they're gonna fail in life or something crazy like that. And so I want to speak to time specifically because Jen and Erinn, you each have had time. Not to make a pun there, but you've each spent time as school leaders. And a lot of this sounds like it's about, can the school leader create space for this stuff? So I'd love to hear from y'all's perspective. And then, Taylor, I want you to jump in and tell me about how people make time for a lot of the programs you guys offer. From a school leader perspective, how could you actually create space and time for this, knowing those seat time pressures? Is there a way to do that? Or is this something that we're not even giving principals the ability to do also, and it just keeps going up the chain? I'm really curious to hear from people who've sat in that seat, and Erinn, you currently sit in that seat still. How can you create more space for this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I do think it's very real that sometimes from the top down, there's other pressures that are put on school leaders that people think that they have more decision-making power than sometimes they actually do have.
Right, right.
But that's also why I think less is more. Like to me, like you have to just pick what's important to you as a school leader. What do you value? And what you value is where your energy goes for your meetings. I think my hope is that with being in a virtual world, that people kind of also see that you can facilitate these things virtually. So there's no reason why I can't maybe let this happen on a PD day at home virtually, or there's more flexibility in what PD has to look like. I think virtual learning has forced us to look at that. So I think that's another point. But again, my thing is always just less is more. I'd rather, as a teacher, get a smaller amount of PD that's quality than a bunch of that's not. The feedback I've consistently, especially during onboarding in the beginning of the year, that I've consistently got back from teachers is it was too much. Like it was good, but it was too much. I don't remember session A from session D because it was too much. Give teachers the time to process those PDs that you bulk in as one large PD, smaller PDs, chunk the PD session, make it smaller, let them go practice it, come back, let's build upon what we did last session, right? We just throw so much stuff and none of it sticks, just like you do with kids. You gotta chunk it, scaffold it.
Yeah, yeah. Jen, what do you think? As a school leader, how can you create more space for this stuff?
Yeah, I would just encourage you to lean into your creativity a little more. And, there's school models that are doing stuff differently already. Like one of the sessions even that you've had this week, Ian, was around schools that are doing stuff differently. And I think the more that we look at these like out of the box school models and like get inspired by the cool different stuff that's going on, the better education's going to be, like just breathing some new innovation into it. So, there's a school here in Atlanta that does a co-teaching model. And then because they do the co-teaching, they're able to do one professional development day every other week. And so teachers actually have the time on that day, not only to go to sessions where they're learning, but also to do like catch up on all the different things that they need to do for their jobs. They've got that time built in. In my school, we really leveraged we call them support teachers. In other schools, they're probably enrichment teachers, sometimes paraprofessionals, to lead some activities and classes and sessions that don't necessarily require a teacher with a full teaching degree. And when we did that, that allowed teachers more planning time. We actually had one day a week that the kids went hiking. Now, our school is a special model school. We served mainly students with ADHD, autism, things like that. Getting out into nature and outdoor ed was a huge part of who we were. But that gave teachers another day of the week that they were able to do stuff. So I don't know, I'm hoping that like with this COVID stuff and this online teaching and remote teaching, like we have an opportunity and I don't want to see us throw it away. I don't want us to see this as like, okay, this was just a gap between what we used to do and then repeating that. I want us to see this as like a starting over point. Like, what did we learn from having to do things differently? What can we keep and what can we throw away? Because there are different ways to do a hybrid model that we really need to be taking advantage of and moving forward with.
Yeah, definitely. Taylor, I'm curious, like, I know you mentioned in your presentation how a lot of the micro credentials, especially that are offered as another form of growth for teachers, can be done at any time. It seems like, this sort of a la carte plus flexibility and time are both things that we really feel like we need to give teachers, at least in the sense that stuff that's relevant and they can do it when they actually have time to do it. Is that what you're finding? Is a lot of people look to virtual programs like yours because of the flexibility it provides?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, we're not new to the online world. We're not new to the virtual world, but one thing that we have learned, like Erinn said, is our meetings don't have to be in person. So even though our school was online, our staff was still doing in-person meetings and things like that. So even just taking that perspective, everyone could make use of virtual. And yes, I am a people person. I would love to go be next to someone, but sometimes that's not relevant, and that sometimes it's not going to work. So you have to take in drive time. You have to take in all of this stuff, even getting ready, right? Like you care a lot less about what you look like when you're sitting on a virtual meeting. So, educators are really put in this, like Jen said, is they are in this profession, and they're held to this high standard, but yet they're not being, given the flexibility of everybody else. They're expected to wear dress pants to school, but they, only get paid $35,000 a year. So that's my soapbox. But anyway, flexibility and timing, allowing people to do their work asynchronous, like you don't have to do it all be there at the same time. Record a webinar and, have them fill out 5 questions. They don't have to be there to do it. Let them choose when it works for them. And I think that's just something that everybody in this world is realizing, is that everybody has 24 hours, but not everybody's 24 hours is the same. So just allowing everybody to take the time to do it at their own flexibility and their own schedule.
And can I add one more thing?
Me too.
Yeah, and then I'm going to stir the pot a second, because I feel like there's an elephant in the room when we talk about time that we're not mentioning. But go ahead, Erinn. What do you?
One thing I was just going to say is to push our thinking about what development means, because professional development doesn't necessarily mean we all sit in the same space and get the same material. It could also mean that if I'm doing a department meeting and we're going to break down standards together, that's development. I'm developing a teacher's knowledge. If I'm looking at data with a teacher and helping them to analyze data regularly, that's development. So also taking it back to your leaders and your coaches, the more that your leaders and coaches are developed, the more that they can develop your teachers in these like micro settings too. All of that still falls under professional development.
Yeah, absolutely. Jen, do you have something to add?
Yeah, like my one more thing, Taylor, you really got me thinking was, you mentioned like there are meetings, there's planning time, and then there's professional development. And I think it's important to just get really clear as a school, and not let those bleed into each other so much. So if a teacher has a planning period, but then also has to go to meetings during that, and also has to go to workshops during that, then is she really able, or is he really able to plan the lessons that he needs to plan? So I think like getting clear about what you mean about like this time is our meeting time. This time is your protected planning time to use it as you need to. This is professional learning, whatever that means. Because Erinn's right, like that can mean a whole lot of things. It can mean coaching. Coaching's a big one I would love to see schools lean into a little more. So yeah, like just like getting clear, protecting time. And then when we're talking about online learning and online experiences and the virtual world, I think it's important to remember like you're never going to replace people with computers in the education world. Like there is no replacement for human connection, none. There is ways to accentuate what we're doing as humans using the power of technology. So I want to make that part really clear too.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I do want to, so this is my attempt at stirring the pot a second. So we all know that time is an issue, right? And I was speaking with a school leader the other day who said that teaching is one of those jobs where you can't actually do the job unless you're working 12 to 14 hours a day, which is obviously not true about most other jobs. Now, I like to compare teachers to athletes, because athletes, like teachers, have to perform and also be competitive in a sense. Like they have to perform at a high level, but it's dependent on other things, and they do it all the time. And so I was a soccer coach and I was an athlete growing up, and I know that during the off season is when you would do most of your training and most of your development. Then once the season started, the practices we had during the week were really just kind of walkthroughs. They weren't even that like intentional. A lot of times we didn't even do them because it was just a waste of time. So here's my question is, if we all agree that we need more time, why are we not keeping teachers over the summer when students aren't around? And you're actually seeing some schools starting to do this a little bit more. And Erinn, I see your reactions. Again, stirring the pot here. Why not just have these teachers come in over the summer and use all of that time for planning much more intensive development et cetera, so that it doesn't have to happen during the school year. Curious what people think about that, because I think we've all agreed that trying to squeeze this stuff into a random day here or there during the year is nearly impossible, and usually has an adverse effect versus what we're trying to do, which is growth.
Well, I'm going to jump in because coming from an organization that kind of attacks teachers, we do consider the summertime a busier season for us, because we know that that's when educators are going to be taking the time to get those professional development hours. They're going to be taking courses because they don't have to be in the classroom. They have that extra flexibility. So that's when they're going to be, taking the opportunity. Also, and I am sure Erinn and Jen could attest to this, but I have spent, and my colleagues have spent 2 weeks at a professional development conference over the summer, because that's when the schools do it or the districts do it. So while you're stirring the pot, but that's what, a lot of the times they do that, is they do take 2 weeks out of the summer to.
I hear you, Taylor. And I think though, and this, and then I'll definitely want to hear what Erinn you have to say about this, is like, let's be real though. I was a teacher, and we know when teachers show up to PD, it's like, this is like free period kind of thing. Let me open my laptop. I'll be cruising around, and part of this I think is to Jen and Erinn's earlier points of like, during the year, it's a lot of times it's irrelevant PD, and it does suck, and it's just not, and because you're in survival mode, you're not really, you don't have energy to really engage with it. But I know teachers, right? Like, we do show up at these things and kind of kick back sometimes, like, okay, this is my day off type of thing. How can we, address that too? Because a lot of times, especially if they're district-led PDs, talk about irrelevant. I mean, how could they possibly be relevant for every individual teacher around? So yeah, I agree with you that people are taking advantage of the time, maybe just not wisely. Erinn, what do you think about this?
One, I think the only way that works is if you can ensure that throughout the year, you're not actually just going to fill that time with something else. But I think for me, it goes back to the resilience piece. I think the reason teachers need the summer so much is to fill themselves back up, because we do not fill them up during the year, right? We spend so much time, teaching is like, you're taking on, like, if you're taking on your students' feelings, parents, your colleagues, like, it's so much, it's draining, right? And we know that also as teachers, you don't get your thanks till much later, Yeah. And so that's one of the other reasons that I think focusing on teacher resilience and self-care, and not just saying like, oh, go, get a massage, but like actual internal like self-care for teachers is the only way that works, because otherwise you just spend all of the summer trying to build yourself back up to go back in. And you're pretty depleted by the time you hit, fall break, if you're so lucky to have one. So I would just say, like, the only way that works is if, as leaders, we truly coach teachers around resilience. How do I emotionally detach? How do I, and like as leaders, model that for teachers. So it's not okay for me as a leader to say, oh yeah, work-life balance, but I'm sending emails at 11 p.m. That sends a message, right? So just making sure that the only way that's going to work is if we're also valuing the resilience that teachers need to continue to do this work day in and day out. Until then, don't touch my summer.
Fair enough. Jen, what do you got?
My answer is pay teachers, pay them, give them their money. Like, I would be more willing to work more days if I was getting compensated for that as a teacher. So if you do the math, there's 365 days in a year. First of all, it's kind of weird that we only expect students to learn half of every year, like mathematically, that's kind of weird to me, but beyond that. So if you look at like a business, like the business corporate world, like, okay, if we've got 365 days, you take out the weekends, that leaves you like 250-ish, 250 days. And then like you take out the 2 weeks vacation, and then that leaves you at even less than that. So like the average work year, even like for the corporate world, is like between 220 and 250 days. And so for teachers, we're working 195. ish, like if you count in like pre-planning and post-planning. So if I were to get paid to work additional days and feel more professionalized and valued for my work, then I'd have no problem with it. But at the same time, like the nature of teaching is, like Erinn was saying, it just drains you. So one, we need to make sure that throughout the year, teachers aren't getting so depleted that they need 8 weeks to recover. Like that's really a big deal. And two, we need to pay them what they're worth. And if we're going to extend the year, we need to make sure compensation is a big part of that. So I think just teacher compensation needs to be more of like a policy level conversation. Like there are so many ways that we could be doing better to make sure teachers are compensated in ways that are just not offensive, honestly.
Yeah, no, I mean, truth be told, I wholeheartedly agree with everything everybody's saying here, especially on the payment side, because it's a classic political chicken or the egg where it's like, well, you're not working year round, so I'm not going to pay you more. Plus the results that we're getting, isn't that great? When on the flip side, it's like, yeah, because we're working ourselves to the bone for 14 hours every day. And then during the summer, to Erinn, exactly on point, like the reason we don't want anybody to touch our summer is because we're so dead. Like, and right now I can imagine that the teachers could probably use the summer break starting right now. And so it is this chicken or the egg where we have to be able to push policymakers, I think, to give us the resources, which would then lead to the time in order to do these types of things. I do want to get to a couple of the Q&A questions. And I'll start with the one from somebody in the audience who is a high school senior and aspires to be a teacher after college. So they were wondering how you guys use student experiences in professional development. And I want to add a nuance to this because I think all of our professional development pretty much takes place without students in the room. And, you know, that's just the way it is. I don't necessarily know if having students in the room is the best way, but and I think this question gets at this, it's like, a lot of this is you got to get good at working with students, and we teach you concepts to do that, but then you got to go and actually do it, right? And so I'm curious, how, if at all, do you think we do or can use student experiences to help shape professional development, teacher development? And I'll just open it up to whoever wants to chime in first.
I can go. I think there's a couple ways. I think while you may not necessarily physically have a student, but ways I've seen it happen is one, by looking at student data, right? So if often the way that I will invest teachers is by showing them like, hey, like the kiddos that you're teaching, this is the data, right? Or this is an anecdote from a student. I remember vividly doing a PD about kind of just like the way that you speak to students, how do you building relationships? And instead of me sitting there saying, well, we should build relationships, I'm gonna actually go ask kids. So I went around with a video camera and was like, hey, you know, how do you feel when XYZ happens? Hearing that from the mouth of the children is way more impactful, right?
Yeah,
than me just kind of
idea. Let's just
right, exactly. Every teacher was invested at that point, right? Because everyone's there for the right reason. Right. So I think you can use student data, student work samples, actually bring their voices into a PD. So for instance, like, hey, you know, Bobby, how does it feel when your teacher differentiates your learning for you? You know, that is so different as a hook into this PD versus me saying, hey, differentiation is proven to do blah, 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 right? So you can bring student voice that way into professional development. And then feedback also. That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say we treat schooling like a lab experiment where all the scientists are the teachers and we leave the lab and like, oh, we gotta talk about what could work next time. In reality, like the kids are human beings. Like you could just talk to them directly, right? And I remember the most impactful conversation I ever had for my development was asking my kids, how is my class? And they told me the truth, and it was not pretty, but it was super helpful, you know? So I'm curious, Jen or Taylor, what do you guys think about trying to incorporate student experiences into this?
That part you just said, Ian, oh, sorry, Taylor.
You're fine, go ahead.
The part you just said, Ian, about getting feedback from the kids was what I was gonna say, like 360-degree reviews, like get the feedback from the kids. And, you know, you can create a survey, you can differentiate this based on age, but like I consider teaching to be a partnership with students. And if I'm not working on my growth based on their experience of my leadership in the classroom, then what am I even doing? So I think really seeking out that feedback. And then the other piece when I think about student experience is me knowing who they are as human beings, their background, what they bring to the table, and incorporating that, like making sure that the experiences they're having in the classroom are culturally relevant and take into mind just where they come from in life. And if I'm not considering that level of their experience and trying to develop myself to meet that, then again, I'm missing the mark. So those would be my two pieces.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to touch on, is that data is really awesome, but it doesn't tell the whole story, right? So you need those anecdotes, you need that evidence from the students that, what their background is, and exactly what Jen said, you need to tell the whole story, because the data may say that the student is failing, but why are they failing? Well, they don't have enough food at home, so they're hungry and they can't concentrate. So, we have to have the whole picture, and the student is in that picture. They are the center of that picture. So just making sure that you're focusing on why you're doing it, who you're doing it for, not just, managing a classroom.
Yeah, so we're almost out of time here, and this has been the fastest conversation I've participated in this week. But I want to toss out one final question, and we'll go over a little bit if that's all right with everybody. And it's the second one that's in the Q&A, and I think it's so relevant to how we started this around retention as well. And the question really centers around how can you let's say you have a couple of really high talent teachers in your school who you want to make sure are growing and also sticking around. What are some tangible ways you can give those teachers a chance to either grow or on more responsibility? Like, how can you make sure that your stars in the making are actually getting the attention that they need and deserve?
I love hybrid roles. Hybrid teaching leadership roles are my favorite idea for that. So one of my favorite jobs in my career was when I had a hybrid teaching and leadership job. I felt so fulfilled in like the two parts of who I am. Like I got to spend half my day with students, working alongside them, helping them grow, growing as a teacher, and then half my day pouring into teachers and knowing firsthand what their day-to-day experience is, like my boots were still on the ground. I was still plugged in. So those hybrid roles, I think we need to really take more advantage of, because two teachers could be serving in two hybrid roles and bring to the table a lot more than if you had just people in admin and just people in teaching. So hybrid roles are an awesome way to do that.
Gotcha. So in that case, it would be like somebody's a teacher and then also coaches a bit on the side too. Okay.
Yeah, maybe they coach, maybe they do other leadership roles depending on what their strengths are. It could be more like a project leader, like if you're more on the operation end, it could be a coaching leader, but something that really allows them to channel their leadership strengths somewhere while also remaining in the classroom, or even using that as a transition point, like in seeing, because like Erinn said earlier, like teaching is one set of skills, leadership's a different set of skills, and we need to honor that. Like some of our star teachers, we need to be creating paths for them to grow. If teaching is what they are best at, most passionate at, most amazing at, there should be a path for them to become master teachers and like really lean into their craft that way. And then for teachers that do want leadership roles, like a hybrid role could be a way to test that out and then growing on their leadership trajectory. So what I hate is when teachers see leadership as an escape from the classroom, because the experience of being a classroom teacher just like wears on you over time. Like that's what we as leaders need to be making sure we're preventing is this teacher seeking a leadership role as an escape from the classroom? And wow, I need to look in the mirror as a leader and see how can I improve that experience so that we don't have that going on.
Yeah, great points. Erinn, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I agree with everything Jen said. That was my first introduction to leadership, was a hybrid role. And it gave me the opportunity to even decide, like, do I even like this? Like, am I even good at this? Because that could be, there's a lot of narratives around like leaders don't do this and leaders don't do that, so that's the thing too. I would add that you as a leader need to be really clear on what kind of leaders you want. So that way, while they're in this hybrid role or while they're developing, you can be developing those skills, like coaching them up to those leadership skills. So also like being really clear, if you don't have the capacity, that's when you bring me in or other people in to help coach your leaders, right? Like being proactive. Sometimes we want to coach people once they're in the role, but like if you see that with a person, you can be actively doing that. That can be, hey, I'm going to give you these, want to lead this professional development? Cool. You know, if you want to be the department chair, like get creative in the leadership roles that can be in your building. And if you have the ability to offer a stipend, do it, right? But like the more hands that you have, it's a win for you as the leader, but it also is developing them. But the key is you've got to give them feedback along the way. You can't just say, hey, lead this professional development for me, or I want you to do a hybrid coaching role. And like, that's what you think is the like ticket to keep them happy. You've got to continue to give them the feedback and the coaching along the way. But hybrid roles, I agree, like 100% the way to go for sure.
Yeah, I feel like you hit on a good point. It's like a lot of times we just heap more responsibility on someone without actually, you know, making it into a development opportunity, which is a wholly different
And
thing.
then that starts to become resentment, because now I feel like you're just piling more on me versus actually sitting. And that's to me also where those very specific development plans come into place, because then the teacher understands like the reason that you're leading this PD, it directly aligns with this goal that you have.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Taylor, you have final thoughts for us?
Yeah, and so it's really just piggybacking off of what they both just said is, but 2 words that I would leave with you is delegation and authenticity. So yes, absolutely delegate things to your emerging leaders. Like they want to feel empowered to grow and to do those things, but also be authentic in saying this role is hard, or saying, you know, you may not like this, but, you know, don't just give them one side of the story. Be authentic in showing them exactly what being a leader looks like and showing them everything, the good and the bad, so that they don't jump into this role and then it's completely different than what they thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think that's a great closing point. It's always great to close with authenticity in any conversation, but I think especially with this. So that's going to be it for us here, but this has been an amazing conversation. We're with Taylor Ingalls from American College of Education, Jen Owen from Co-Created, the Professional Development Marketplace, and Erinn Cottman, a leader in her own right, and also has an Erinn Cottman Teacher Development Consulting, where it brings in professional development to you and your school leaders. So we thank you all so much for this. This has been our ATL Education Expo conversation. We will put it up on YouTube in the next few hours. So many nuggets of wisdom. And honestly, I could have gone on for another hour. I have so many more questions. We might have to do this again sometime. But I appreciate everyone who's been with us. And thanks for those who tuned in. And we'll see you all soon.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.